Hi, thanks for checking in with us again on Marriage Matters. Obviously, if you're watching this video, there is something that you're interested in regard to your marriage. Barbara and I have been married for 61 years, and the reason we're doing these videos is to share some of our journey and hopefully help others along the way to build intimacy and a strong marriage relationship. Uh, your marriage is either moving toward intimacy or it is moving toward isolation. And we have seen a lot of marriages move into the isolation area, and that's not good. It usually doesn't end well. So today we want to talk about how to build intimacy, how to build trust, and have a strong, close relationship that can weather the storms of life.
One day last week, I was walking through the house, and there's some things going on in personal and lives, and you wonder, about life and what's going to happen. But I was walking through the house, and the word safe came to me. I'm safe. And not only was I safe in the house, but I thought about our relationship, and I just am so safe in this relationship. So Tom came up with kind of words that go with safe.
An acrostic like SAFE, secure for the S, acceptance, faithful to one another, and embrace. And we're going to talk about those in maybe a little different context, but in order to have intimacy in your marriage, you need to be secure with one another. And that's really what trust is. And we want to talk more about trust, I guess, today than anything else.
You can't feel safe if you don't trust. And we all need a place to feel safe. We all need someone with whom to be safe with. In my preteen years, I wasn't safe. I wasn't safe in my home, in relationships and so it was hard for me to learn how to feel safe. I had to learn to trust Tom, and it wasn't easy. And if either of you in your relationships and your spouse, one or the other, have been abused, sexually abused,
or emotionally abused.
Right. Anyway, physically abused, it's hard to trust again. When I was doing research for my book that I have on child sexual abuse, every questionnaire that was returned to me it was like they were crying out. They said, I have had a hard time trusting anybody again as an adult. So that's hard when you come into marriage if you have that experience. And the first thing we would encourage that is to have a good counselor. But we'll talk more about that when we deal with sexuality on a video. But now it's just, how did I learn to trust Tom?
Well, it's a process. I mean, she had to learn how to open up her inner thoughts and feelings to me. We all talk to ourselves. That's what our thoughts are. And I guess we're safe with ourselves. If you're not, you have probably have a mental problem when you are not safe with yourself. That's what causes people to do harm to themselves. But when you're safe within yourself and you talk to yourself, you feel secure. And you have to do that with your mate. I have to tell Barb what is in my thoughts, and I have to feel safe to tell her those things, and the same that she has to be with me. And that wasn't easy for her in the beginning of our marriage, but that was a long time ago, and we've worked through that. And so we both feel very safe with one another, and there are no secrets.
But the idea of trust, it's the giving of yourself to another with absolutely no fear of rejection, no judgment, no put downs. And we had to learn that because, when you're young, hey, he was 18, I was 17. No, I was 18.
Well, when we were dating, yeah. But we married, I was 19 and she was 18, and I was almost 20, but we were kids, really.
So, but it's learning that he's not going to throw me under the bus, and or I throw him under the bus. And we had times when that happened. It's a process of learning, and there were times I cried, and I'm sure there are times he.
Well, sometimes you say things in jest, jokingly, and they don't take it the way you mean it, and it ends up hurting. And then, but if you don't talk about that, get it out in the open, it builds a wall between you. Instead of building intimacy, you start moving into isolation.
So even if you've been married 1 year, 5 years, or 20 years, there are times that happen. Things happen because we're human. But the main thing is to communicate those feelings. And I've always been able to say, you hurt my feelings. So that's a good thing. You need to be able to do that. But it's total confidence that he's going to receive me. And it's a comfort. It's comforting knowing that he won't judge me or reject me with anything I say or do. I talked to 2 or 3 of my friends who have good marriages, and asked them about feeling safe. And one, she lost her husband almost 2 years ago. They would have been married 60 years this year. But she said there was never a time that I didn't feel safe with him. He was always there. He always took care of me. So, and then she wrote back later. She said, I don't want to say we were perfect. We were not perfect, but we were good in how we tried to love each other and accept each other. She said, I know I was safe with him. I was secure because I knew I was loved. And another friend, she said immediately when I asked her, I said, when have you felt the most safe? And she said, well, I've always felt safe, but she was diagnosed with cancer 4 years ago. And she said, immediately when you asked that question, I just wanted to say, Mike has been there for me. He has had to help me do things which were hard, but I've never felt that I was a worry to him, or he didn't want to do it. I was so safe. So, and that didn't happen overnight. It didn't happen the first year of marriage, because we have to grow into that. And the first steps in trusting, as we've mentioned a little bit, is communicating. You have to tell everything, how you feel, what you think.
Well, that's kind of hard. Sometimes your personalities are in such a way that it's difficult for maybe the man to be very open, but you've got to learn to do that. There's a verse in the book of Amos, the Old Testament, says, can 2 walk together unless they are agreed? Well, obviously that's true. If you're not in agreement, you can't walk together. You obviously got to be in agreement of direction, where you're going. If you're going in 2 different directions, you're not together. If one's faster than the other, you're not together. And sometimes you have to stop on the journey and rest. So you got to be in agreement on that. So the Bible really zeroes in on relationships, what it's talking about, and it's agreement. And agreement is talking and sharing and being open and letting your partner know what you're thinking and feeling.
And and sometimes in that that's conflict, and we dealt with a little bit with that, but in our last video. But sharing is vital I have a friend who's been married as long as we have. She's never, ever been able to share with her husband how she felt, what hurt her, or anything. And I have worried about her, but she's an amazing believer, but she has not had a good marriage. She's never moved toward intimacy in marriage. So that same verse, I like to turn around and say, can two walk together except they trust each other? And
Yeah, well, that is very true. And if you don't trust another person, you're always suspicious about them. And in the back of your mind, you're thinking, well, what did they mean by that? Or, whatever. That's, excuse me. That's why it's so important to be able to communicate and open up and talk and share your feelings and your hopes and dreams and where you want to go and all those things.
so, as I said, it was hard for me to trust Tom. And when we were first married, well, I don't know how many years in our marriage, I was jealous. It was hard for me to believe he could love me. How could I trust that some man could love me just as I was? So, and I think one way that manifested itself in our marriage was I was jealous, but he never, I don't think he ever put me down for that or made me feel, I mean, he tried to reinforce.
Reassured her that she's the only one for me. Still is.
I know, but that was we've had hard times over that, and so I know sometimes there are challenges in marriages, and there are helps. There's so many helps today if you want to grow toward intimacy. So how do you learn to trust, and how do you learn to be secure with your spouse? How do you trust him? How do I trust him with my thoughts and my feelings?
Well, you start with little things. Trust has to be built. And so it's the little things in life. If you, for example, the husband goes to work and he comes home and his wife knows that there are women in the office or whatever, and she asks him, how was your day? Then he needs to be able to tell her what went on during the day. And if she asks, well, what about whatever her name is, what about her? And
he's talking from experience.
Yeah. So anyway, she's got to learn that I trust him with that situation. And once that trust is established, then it begins to develop and build. And before you know it, you don't even think about it anymore.
So that's why communication is so important. Communication is so. But I learned that when I shared my feelings, that Tom didn't reject me. So little by little, you learn that it's okay. What thoughts I want to tell him, that I can trust him with my thoughts. I can trust him with my feelings. And that's so important. And you have to become vulnerable. You have to, I just hope none of you that are listening here are fearful of what your husband or your wife how they might receive you if you're being honest and open. So I encourage you just to do that with love and consideration and kindness. So when we first married, I probably had to have a counselor. So Ladies' Home Journal became my counselor. That was a magazine. It's one of the oldest and a long-running magazine for women. It began in 1883 or something like that. But in 1953, they started an article on Can This Marriage Be Saved? In 1953. So we married in 64. So when I would get that magazine, I would always read, Can This Marriage Be Saved? And they talked, it was real life people, but there was a counselor who gave advice. So, it's little things like that helped us on the way, because I was always open to understanding and knowing how to improve and how to do better. So
I think that's a key too, and certainly in building trust, is both parties being open to learning new ways of communicating and sharing your heart with one another. If you don't learn how to do that, then you're stuck in a pattern that is going nowhere really. So,
and another key component in trust is accepting. I accept Tom for who he is, and but I didn't always. At first, I thought he was perfect. And that lasted a few years.
And then she discovered that I was not.
Yeah, I discovered he was not perfect. Yeah. But, and we always think, if I could just change that about him, he would be so much better. Or, maybe if he were this way. So, and I went through that, but one day it just hit me. If I changed one thing about him, just one thing, he wouldn't be the Tom I fell in love with. Of course, sometimes we hide when we first get dating and we're first married, we hide how we really are. But, and then, we think we...
But we do need to change. Obviously there are things in...
Right. But I don't need to change him.
I can't change her. She can't change me. The only change can happen is when I decide that I need to make a change for the better, for her sake, and for our sake.
So it's just a wonderful freedom to accept him as him. And
warts and all.
Right.
Okay.
So trust is absolutely imperative, and I think the first thing we do as we accept each other, we grow in that. I want to read you, remember I had mentioned the Triumphant Marriage book we're kind of reading through again. And so Neil Clark Warren says on page 45, when you trust another person, you sense that you can afford to be open and entirely yourself. And he says, I've discovered that no marriage can be triumphant. And that's the name of his book, 100 Triumphant Marriages. No marriage can be triumphant until both people are able to fully and freely be themselves. And no marriage can be maximally satisfying until the central features of both personalities are totally in play. And he said that can only happen when trust is at a high level. Yeah. And he goes on to mention a couple that he and his wife know, and he said they're one of their favorite couples and they're close. But he said they're very intimate. They're deeply intimate with each other. But he said, they're able to share positive and negative feelings with each other when they're around them. And he said that's good because that they have totally accepted each other. And Tom and I sometimes can really, I don't think it's fuss, it's like what do we do? What do you call it?
Fight.
No, not fight. Well, maybe with words. I want to do it and he wants to do something else.
We don't agree on everything. I don't think anybody. Couple agrees on everything. Like we said in another video, if we agreed on everything, one of us is not necessary. But
we're able to do that back and forth, and still we're very intimate as far as how we...
It doesn't destroy our relationship. We don't let it get into a conflict situation.
Right, that's it. Yeah. So trust is the first step in growing into a deep oneness, an intimacy that transcends the physical, true...
Well, we have defined intimacy before in another video, and it bears repeating here. Into me see is what intimacy is. It's opening up and allowing your partner to see into your life, into your heart, your mind, your soul. And you have to do that. And that builds trust. It builds a strong marriage. It builds confidence in your marriage. It it gives peace in your marriage, and you're at ease with each other, and life is good. That's the way it's supposed to be.
But and we're not talking just about physical. And I was trying to answer the phone. I mean, to delete a phone call coming in. The physical, and we talked about touching in another video. The physical, you need to grow toward an intimacy in the physical. It's touching all day, it's hugging, it's cuddling, it's in the appropriate ways and places, and of course it means a sexual act. But it's as you grow into sharing your emotions and your intellect. We haven't talked much about sharing our intellect.
Well, no, but intimacy is really becoming one. You know, the Bible, in the very first of the Bible, in the book of Genesis, when God created man and woman, Adam and Eve, and he married them in a sense, and he says, the two shall become one. Well, you become one. We cannot become one physically. We become one physically in our children. But we can become one emotionally and spiritually. We can be on the same page. And that's really what we're talking about here today, is living on the same page, traveling together on the same journey, being open with each other, trusting one another, loving one another. And in doing so, you're building a strong marriage that not only does it benefit you, but it benefits your children, your grandchildren, your friends, and people who are watching all the time. People watch us.
So, how can you walk together without trust, without an intimate relationship in these ways? But here lately, I mean, I cried last night. We were sitting outside in the garden, and I said, how could we do what we're doing now as far as in life, approaching our age and some health issues? How do I do it? I said, I cannot imagine doing life any day. He is the most important part of my life, and to know that we wake up together every morning is so important. But you don't get where we are today without working and studying. And Dr. Warren says marriage, on every chapter in this book, he talks about how hard work marriage is. And you have to choose. You have to choose. Am I going to work hard? Am I going to learn new skills? Am I going to learn how to open my heart in sharing? And how am I going to learn how to fight well and learn new techniques in all of marriage areas? So it's just hard work, and we encourage you to study. We talk about that all the time.
Okay, well, we hope that this video will be helpful to you, at least learning how to trust one another and find your safe place with each other, so that through the process of loving and learning and trusting one another, you really do become one. One in your journey, one in heart and mind, and everyone can see that. And you can also see a couple who are not together. So our hope and our prayer for all of you who watch these videos is that you can at least glean a little something from our journey, and it will help you on your journey. So until the next video,
be safe.
Be safe.
Learn to be safe at home and in your hearts.
Yeah. Thanks for watching.